I don't know. It just did not feel very comfortable at all.
Okay. Let's go.
I've got so much stuff I want to talk about on this subject.
Okay. Bring it on.
I think I have to be careful because I might just end up just ranting a lot.
That's fine. I'm like, I wasn't sleeping much, so I feel free to fucking rant. I would just be nodding and then.
Okay, so today we're talking about socialization
and some myths about socialization, because I think the understanding of the socialization, especially in general public, is not where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also just in terms of dog training culture, the ideas about socialization have changed dramatically. I think especially over the last kind of 10 to 15 years, actually. And I think a lot of that was led by the dog sport stuff.
But
not really.
Do you think
surprising.
We have the most knowledge right now than ever?
Yeah.
Right? And my question that I, ask quite frequently, we have so much knowledge, right now, everybody, every random person that will get the puppy, they know they should socialize the puppy. They at least heard the term. Socialization is on every single puppy class. It's this term is thrown left and right, all over the internet, or I don't think there is dog owner that would say I don't want to socialize my puppy. Right? Maybe some weirdos, but they are there. But I think the awareness is there. We should socialize our dogs. We were talking on last podcast on genetics, and I think the breeders are also, the most educated than ever. So my question is why do we still have so many reactive dogs or fearful dogs?
Yeah, I think I think it's a combination actually, because I do think, we could do a whole podcast on breeders, but I feel like probably the majority of breeders are crap. So maybe we could do a whole podcast on that. But
so yeah, there are breeders, but also what I think, I believe that the vast majority of dog owners, they don't really understand what socialization really is. Because socialization is not friendliness. And the vast majority of people, dog owners, if you ask them, what is the purpose of socialization, right? They will most likely say something what means, I want to make my dog friendly to everything, to people, to dogs, to whatever, right? Where socialization, by definition, is not about friendliness, right? It's about teaching to behave within the social norms, and that's it. I think the even bigger problem is that we don't have well-established social norms in our human-dog society, where in our human society is pretty much clear. I think I mentioned that on this podcast before. Let's say you wait in the queue, especially in UK and Poland, right? Those are two countries that are a little bit crazy about waiting in the queue and not cutting the queue, right? Otherwise, if you don't do that, you're a dick, right? But it's obvious, right? You do that. So we have that social norm. You will say good morning to your neighbor, it's a social norm. However, in our human dog world, we don't have those well-established social norms. There will be people that, and this is what I'm experiencing daily, there will be people that they will ask me oh, can my dog say hi, or shall I put my dog on the lead, or something along those lines. And there will be people that they will, ignore their barking, running towards me, barking dog, and they will just say he's fine, he's not gonna bite. What sort of fucking argument that is, by the way? But we have those extremes, and I think dog owners, they don't have clear idea, or we don't have those clear social norms in our human dog world, and that's the problem.
Yeah. I think it really helps for people to understand the history of how socialization or the ideas around it have developed. And I'm kind of my face is straining because I can't remember the names of the people that did one of the early studies, and it's really bothering me. But
so you didn't get prepared.
The thing is, I have taught this before. I can't remember anyway, but there was. I'm just going to carry on because otherwise I'll just sit here trying to think of the names for ages. But there were two scientists that came out with a study that was basically all about, hey, if you don't socialize dogs in their socialization periods when they're really, really young, then they end up with all of these issues surrounding fear and anxiety. And that kind of was the information the dog trainers had for the longest time. And the response to that was like, okay, we just need to get these dogs around as many dogs and people as we possibly can. And that's where you had like puppy parties, and like a lot of people were talking about things like pass the puppy. So you take the puppy and everyone would pass it around, and you know, and there's all these kind of like old school ideas around, we just need like as much exposure as possible. However, there were a few problems with that, which kind of people have started to realize. The first is it made no differentiation between good and bad experiences. So like, if your dog is exposed to lots of other dogs, but they're getting beaten up and bullied and they're having a terrible time, surprise, surprise, it doesn't go well. So that was the first problem. And the second problem was, okay, we do all of these puppy parties, and let's say it goes well. Now our dog's going to puppy party and they're playing with all the other dogs and they're having a great time. But when they hit adolescence, I'm taking them to the park and I'm letting them off lead. And of course, because of what we've set them up to expect, they're running up to every single dog, they're running up to people, because they've learned that those distractions are like a source of reinforcement, or a source of like fun things. And then that makes it really hard for people to control their dogs, because now the whole world has become so much more reinforcing than it would have been if you had raised the dog with some neutrality. And actually, I just thought there's a third problem there as well, is once the dog starts running up to a lot of other dogs, and starts, even if it's not like a rude thing, even if let's say that you just socialize your dog with a lot of other dogs, well, you also open yourself up to a lot of problems with, in terms of they're much more likely to have a negative experience with another dog. For example, with Lupe, he's 8 months old. He's sniffed 2 dogs, other than the ones he lives with. He's been around hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dogs. But because he's only actually sniffed 2 dogs, all of his experiences with dogs have been positive.
Yeah.
If I would have taken him to the park or a puppy party or something like that, and he would have met hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dogs, of course, it's a numbers game. He's far more likely to have had a negative experience, and that who knows how that could have affected him. So sometimes people worry about raising dogs with neutrality, like, oh, am I going to cause reactivity because I'm not socializing them a huge amount? Actually, it's kind of the opposite. If you socialize your dog by having them meet hundreds of dogs, you're far more likely to have bad experiences. So you're far more likely to develop fear reactivity, but that's not all. You're far more likely to develop frustration reactivity too, because you've taught your dog that other dogs are a source of reinforcement, and frustration is like, I can't go and access that, right? If you raise them with neutrality from the beginning, the dogs are not a source of reinforcement, so there's no frustration. It's like, it's just noise in the environment. It's not relevant to them.
Yeah, definitely. Like positive arousal, too much positive arousal can be as problematic as negative arousal. So negative arousal, let's say fear. Positive arousal, friendliness. If we have too much of that, and we have that frustration element that will amplify the level of arousal, that can be as problematic as fear or this negative arousal. And I think, because like I'm so obsessed with the definitions and I'm always sticking to that, like, so we can understand what we really want to do it, then there are more chances that we'll do it right. There is a reason why we have social norms, like just to save the energy. And this is like why we have feelings, so our brain can kind of balance like what comes in and what goes out, right? So within human societies, we develop social norms so we can save the energy. If you look like me or similar, and you behave like your behavior is predictable to me, we're fine. I can save the energy, so I don't have to spend that, because that is not serving survival. And something what you mentioned, and it's so accurate, that we used to take this poor puppy and expose this puppy to everything, and this puppy would be most likely overwhelmed. This is the one thing. We are having like much more chances that the puppy will experience something negative. And as we know, like one negative experience will need a lot of positives to make it up for it. But also we are not teaching the dog to be actually social, right? Because like if we are teaching the dog to be bully towards the other dog, or to be excited, arguably it's not social behavior, right? So, and on the top of that, right, if the dog is exposed to too many things and spending that energy, at the end of the day, anything negative will affect them even more, because like the dog is drained from any resilience. And again, we are talking a lot about trigger stacking, and we think about that in like almost exclusively in negative experiences term, that if the dog will experience like enough negative things during the day, will trigger stack. But also like any sort of like novelty or learning about the world, like that contributes to that trigger stacking. So if you have the puppy that cannot recover from learning about the world, less likely those even potentially experiences will be positive.
Yeah, so like to tie the social norm stuff and what I'm talking about with the neutrality stuff together, it's like even once you've embraced the ideas of like, okay, I need to raise my dog to see these things as just noise in the environment as opposed to being really reinforcing, it's like, well, it's hard for you to go out and do that unless you have strategies, because the culture we live in right now, there are a lot of people that just think it's okay to just let their dogs run up to everyone.
Oh yeah, and like depends where you live, the social norms will be dramatically different. We mentioned that on the last episode, that let's say we bring those dogs from, let's say, Eastern Europe, where normal dogs behavior, which is social dogs behavior, is being unfriendly. And we bring them over here and we have totally different norms over here. That's why we are coming tired from the holidays, right? Because if you will go somewhere where you don't know the social norms, and that is going to be like totally different culture, you will spend a lot of energy to learn that, like to kind of learn about the world, learn how to behave, etc., etc. That's why we are coming back tired from holidays, right? And the same, like absolutely the same with the dogs. It's just we can rationalize that. I don't think our dogs can.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking about that, like I remember spending some time in Europe, and in Europe there are oftentimes when you greet people, you do the whole thing of like hugging, kissing each other, kissing on each side of the cheek.
I will tell you even more of that.
I'll tell you what, it does not come naturally to me whatsoever. I always feel so awkward in that. I remember like when I first was experiencing that when I was younger, and I just remember feeling so incredibly awkward. And also just like, I don't know, it just did not feel very comfortable at all.
Okay, you are a typical British person saying, like, putting Europe in one kind of category, and we'll get to that.
I didn't want to single.
However, we are in Europe.
I know, we always talk about this.
Okay, but for example, like I've been multiple times in Asia, I've been in Africa, and like this is totally different world, like totally different world. However, in Europe, like it's like one fucking country.
Yeah.
You will have Finland, that I lived for a couple of years, that nobody will make on the street, like nobody will smile to you, nobody will make eye contact or even eye contact. Less likely will talk to you, someone stranger will talk to you, where in UK it's pretty much normal that you will have like the small chat, right?
It also can you can come across as quite rude if someone tries to talk to you and you just ignore them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. So you can imagine, like I lived in Finland, and I went for a birthday party to Belgium to my friend, and that was like multicultural like environment from all the other parts of the world. And then I would like, I didn't count, but I would argue I was kissed more time by strangers than I received, like during one evening, than I received like eye contact for the 2 years of living in Finland. Right? It was like, like in Finland, you don't do that. Like I signed up to the ITP club and I didn't speak Finnish, and for a couple of months nobody talked to me. Again, it was normal. It was normal. Like I was sitting over there and trying to learn about IGP, right? Wherein, so I was, after 2 years, I was a little bit like wild animal, like coming into Belgium, to Brussels, and then I was like, Jesus Christ, like those people are very touchy, right? And they're like kissing me all the time, right? So, in other hand, which something what I was advised not to do in UK, in Finland, you are naked in sauna. If
Right.
you are dressed, it's kind of weird. So on the camps for helpers, I was like sitting alongside with like 20 other naked guys, and that was normal. That was absolutely normal. And like when I moved to UK, one friend advised me not to like undress completely in public sauna, otherwise I will be banned in that gym, and probably I will be banned to come close to like some schools.
Well, the culture has changed with that though, because like my granddad's generation, because I remember when I was young, when I was like a teenager, he took me to the gym, and because he was like super into gym stuff, and but his generation, when they would just get changed in changing rooms, they would be naked, and they wouldn't even, like, it's the culture has changed because they wouldn't even care, like they wouldn't like be in a rush to put their clothes back on.
Yeah.
They'd just be doing whatever they have to do, right? Whereas now, the newer generation, you would never do that.
Okay,
Right?
so I had a conversation with my friend from Finland, Kimi, when I lived over there, and we are talking about those cultural differences in Europe, which is between the countries you have like so much diversity. And he was saying like he was going to sauna with his parents and they were naked, and like it's perfectly normal. Where like this is like a fucking line for me. I'm not doing that with my parents. Like it's just like I accept it. Like I've seen so many dicks in my life, like during those 2 years living in Finland, that I can live with that. But parents, this is the line. Like this is the line that I'm not gonna cross. And I was weird over there.
The line is your dad's dick.
I never thought about that this way, but
I was gonna say, with the young people, what I mean is, I think with young people, of course, at some point you have to get naked, but it's for like as minimal time as possible. Versus the older generation, they will just wander around, like it's not even a consideration,
yeah.
That's
But
what I was.
speaking of which, we have like so many differences, like across the countries, even in Europe. Like you don't have to go far. The same with the dogs. Like what is like normal dog's behavior somewhere? Like it's like in my grandma's like village ages ago. It was normal. You don't go into someone's property because you're gonna get bitten, and that was normal. Like people were expecting it. So like right now, like in UK, we don't want the dogs to be dogs. We don't want that unfriendliness. We want like total friendliness.
Even that has changed though, because I remember when I was a kid, my grandparents had an Akita, and the conversation, and not just them, like this was other family members had German Shepherds and stuff. This was like, but this is just the one I was seeing most regularly. But they would like, it was like, don't touch the dog. Don't, especially if they're eating or sleeping, you leave them alone. You weren't even around the dog if you didn't have one of the adults present.
All right.
And now that's just completely gone. You see these videos online, which I know are not the greatest source of information, but like kids clambering all over dogs. And I think people just expect dogs to just put up with everything.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if I would have got bitten by the dog when I was a kid, I feel like the adults would have been like, well, what were you doing?
Yeah. I got bitten by the dog when I was a kid, and then it was because like the bitch had puppies. So that was it. This is why you got bit. Right? Don't come close.
Yeah.
And that was really it. But yeah, we are expecting the dogs to tolerate absolutely everything, and if the dog is performing like dog's behavior, we kind of don't like it, which I don't know, like I think I have that thing in my thought in my mind that I respect the dogs that they bite, like for any reason. That's why I do protection sports, right? I'm not saying bite out of control, but the dog's supposed to be able to bite, even if it's Chihuahua. Like, get that dog a sleeve.
What is frustrating though as well is that kind of goes into like sometimes people get a dog that's bred to do something and then they are angry that the dog is doing the thing. Like I've had a bit of a spate of people that have guarding breeds that are frustrated that their dog is guarding. And it's like, well, that's what you got. Yeah. Or like, for example, people get Dachshunds, they get frustrated that the dog's barking. It's like, well, you bought a watchdog. Like you bought a dog that was bred to bark.
Yeah.
That seems to be a big problem as well.
Yeah. But speaking of socialization, like if you have a puppy, have you got any hardcore rules for raising a puppy?
Well, I think, my way of doing it has evolved massively, especially over the last few years. Like I said, with Lupe now, I'm getting him around. I want to get him around things, but I don't necessarily need him to interact with those things. I certainly don't want him to interact with things that he's going to find reinforcing, and then that's going to be something that might cause me problems later. But one thing I found difficult when I was kind of going on that like learning curve of like learning about this stuff was a lot of people would, even once you kind of like you kind of feel like you've signed up for that, like, okay, the old way of doing socialization is not really good. I'm on board with this neutrality stuff, but it's like I didn't feel like there was a lot of information about how do I do it? Like what does that actually look like? So that's something I felt like I had to figure out over the last few years. Even just things like, okay, well, how do I navigate the situation when I go to the park and there's other dogs around, or there's children, or like what exactly am I supposed to be doing? Like what are the things I should teach my dog in order to get through those situations? Like how does it all look? I felt like that was really lacking on the internet, and I was so I kind of had to figure a lot of that stuff out, and I was gonna say this at the end, but I feel like this is really natural to say it. This is why I ended up created the 66 Club, which is my school group, which I'll put in the description so people just click the link and join. Is totally free. But also the course that I ended up creating and putting in that, which is again is free, like you don't have to pay anything, is literally the stuff that I felt like I learned about this from getting it wrong, from just learning lots of stuff about this. So that's kind of like, So I think I'll put it in there. You can find it on my social media, but I'll put it in the description, the link anyway, so people can find it. But the 66 Club on school. So.
Yeah, I've got like 3 rules or 3, like let's say, secrets that I follow almost religiously when I'm raising a puppy. The first one is, maybe I mentioned it before, that I will like never, ever let strange dog to greet my puppy. Like I will socialize my puppy only with the dogs that I know and I can trust, and I know it's a good match for the puppy. Like all the rest of the other dogs are to ignore, and people don't like me for it, like especially from the public, because I will always or pick up my puppy or ask the dog to call the person to call their dog back, and people still have that idea that, oh, you should socialize your dog, you should teach your dog to like the other dogs, right? Regardless if you have Chihuahua and like they have a German Shepherd that will play cat and mouse with your Chihuahua, right? Oh, you should teach your dog to like other dogs. But the most aggressive dog that I ever had, it was because of, back then I had this idea that I should put my puppy in the group of dogs in order to socialize them with dogs, which, like, for all the other dogs that was like fun, for my puppy it was traumatizing, and I ended up with, like extremely aggressive dog. Because of that, like that single experience, right? The second thing is, I want to give my dog escape room, like my puppy. I want to give my puppy escape room. What I mean by that, just imagine you have to go to the party with a bunch of strangers. You don't know those people, right? What would you prefer? To invite them to your house where, you have no influence when what they're gonna do and when they gonna leave? Or would you prefer to go to someone's house and meet those people? If you are semi-normal dog owner or even dog trainer, which is more on introvert side of spectrum,
Mhm.
I would say, like at least myself, I would prefer to go to someone else's house, and I would be much more curious and also braver and much more likely to take risk, and I will tolerate much more because I can always leave. I can always leave. Like if those not gonna be fun people, I can always go back home, right? But also I will put up with a little bit more because like I can always leave, right? So I have that option. If those people will come to my house, I have to hang out with them till they will decide to leave, and that is stressful, right? The same with our puppies. Like you want to give your puppy sort of means to escape or escape room. That can be, let's say, if I'm socializing my small puppy with bigger dog, right? I can provide the dog like somewhere to hide, so the puppy can check out from that interaction. The puppy can come to my hands and I will always accept that. Like if the puppy is unsure about the dog and will try to climb on my, on me, then I will pick up the puppy and then I will give him a break and we can try it again. And we can try again.
Yeah.
Then I socialize like a lot of puppies this way that they were very hesitant to start with. Hey, you can, like, this is your safe place. You want to try? Okay, let's try. You can come back over here. And the dog was getting braver with every repetition.
This is very taboo, Alex. So much of the conventional dog wisdom.
I don't give a shit about conventions. You know me enough, right? The last thing is like the other dog can be on the lead, so the puppy can create a distance and can check out from that situation. I find that very, very useful in terms of the confidence, but also like this dog will be more happy to take some risk, will tolerate a little bit more as long as like way to escape from that interaction.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. Those are really good points. And also there's some things that I have found really helpful for navigating just regular life, like for when you're doing the neutrality automatic recalls, especially with other dogs, which tend to cause you the most problems. So like as soon as the dog sees the dog, they're recalling. Right, that means that if you turn the corner, you don't see the dog, your dog already knows that means to come back. And then also I feel like you need a way of getting past dogs. I think that's really important. When I'm teaching people, I tend to give people two options. Either they have the dog in middle and they can walk past in the middle position, or as the army guys on Instagram call it, tactical healing.
Yeah. With the fucking military vest. There are civilians, but they're just like a soldier, and they're not 12.
Or you can do the off-lead healing. Or you can do on-lead healing, right? But
everything comes down to obedience training. And this is the kind of third thing what I'm doing in terms of the socialization. We tend to think about socialization like this is like interaction with the environment where it is behaving within the social norms. Everything comes down also like good obedience is part of the good socialization, because good obedience will give me like whether I want to be fancy and do army healing or whatever, I want to dress like a soldier even though I'm 40 and civilian, that's fine, I can do that. I can do normal focus heal or normal like contact heal or street heal, doesn't matter, like everything comes down to like good obedience. The same with the recall. It's just obedience training and teaching the dog how to behave in the environment, not like really what not to do or to interact with everything. It's teaching the dog to how to behave the same like you teach children, like, I don't know, wait in the queue, to go with that example, right? Don't cut the queue, like wait in the queue. So I much prefer to teach the dog what to do rather than what not to do. And we are talking a lot about choices, and it's fine, we should give the dogs choices. But however, if the dog doesn't know the norms or the like rules or what is right or what is wrong, we cannot be upset the dog is not making good choices. Like my dog will do good choices when you have history of doing them, or you have history of me guiding my dog to behave certain way. So you mentioned automatic recall. This is beautiful, right? Just a tip for everyone. It's not when you will see the dog, it's when your dog will see the thing. Like, for example, other dog. Very often it's kind of other way around. So when I'm out and about with my dog, I'm mainly paying attention to my dog. And if my dog will show interest, like will lift the head, the ears will go up, then I will cue my dog to come back to me, and then I will really see, like, check what that was, right? Because I want overall distraction to me, to come back to me and walk past in any sort of style of healing.
You know, it's interesting, isn't it? Because once you start, like, I've started teaching a lot of this stuff recently, and when you start teaching stuff, you start developing ways of explaining it. And you've been doing it a lot longer than me, so you probably have different ways. But like with the automatic recalls with other dogs, I've started saying to people, you kind of have an A, B, and a C grade, you know, and the C grade is you actually have to verbally recall the dog when they see the dog. The B grade is we put a little bit of lead pressure on, which we've already taught the dog means come back. And then the A grade is they just do it when they see the dog. And usually you kind of go through those grades. Like in the beginning, they see the dog, you have to call them back. You get enough repetitions like that, and you've done enough of the lead pressure training, then you move up to the B grade. We can just do a little bit of lead pressure, and then eventually we get to the A grade, they're just coming back.
I would do it the other way around, like between B and C. But it's just my way. Because I would start with because physical communication will always be overrating the verbal one. But at the end of the day, I don't want to rely on mechanics, right? I want my dog to listen and then to offer. So offering is the hardest, listening second hardest, and feeling the easiest from those three. So I would start with the mechanics, pair that with the verbal, so then the dog will respond to the verbal, and then I want the dog to offer that. At worst case scenario, I can move to the B, so I will call the dog, but I want to get rid of the lion's lead as soon as possible. That's why my life with my young dog is so frustrating.
I guess it depends how. I mean, that does make sense. But when in my head, when I'm visioning it with the lead pressure, I'm not talking about reeling the dog in. Like
I get it. It's just if I want to charge my verbal commands, and we can talk about it, like, because we're talking. Let's say, like with any sort of behavior, we have a lead pressure or how I call it, communication. There are differences between those two things, but let's say tactile cues, which the dog will respond more likely than to the verbal. So there are tactile cues, visual signals, and then verbal commands, right? So if I want to charge my verbal command, I will pair that with the tactile. So I will use the tactile, for example, lead pressure. Other way around. I will say the verbal, second later, I will use the mechanical. Verbal, second later, mechanical. Because there are the times that the dog will not respond to the verbal. And over time, the dog should, at least theoretically, respond to the verbal, right? And then I want to take my verbal because it's convenient, then mechanical. But yeah, depends, how you wanna.
No, this is what I said, Jeff. You've been doing it for longer than me. Yeah, this is cool.
So I really believe that we dog trainers, we should educate society, and I wouldn't be part of any sort of movement, whether it's political, me enough, or dog training, especially dog training ones movements. But I think that would be only movement that I would sign in, just to educate, society, that we can establish those norms, and it's not gonna be so fucking weird that you don't want this off-lead dog to greet your puppy or greet your dog, because that may not end well, or whatever. You are in the mood, and your dog may not just appreciate that. Your dog can be after, I don't know, surgery, or just the dog doesn't really enjoy that interaction, right? I can imagine, like, and it's like it shouldn't be so weird to claim. Like, let's say, I don't know, like if I have to be cuddled and kissed, I prefer that to be my girlfriend than 56 years old George with smelling cigarettes and whiskey, right? Like, is it that weird to not wanting that contact? And if you have like, this old dog that is just thinking about procreation and will be jumping and humping this puppy, like, come on.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's interesting that we got onto the obedience stuff though, because this is something that it has like, and it's crazy to me, but it has kind of become like almost divisive. Like there's this strange movement nowadays of like trying to do less obedience, which is just, I think that was the first episode we ever did. It's just like crazy to me.
Speaking of which, sorry to like you plugged your thing.
Okay.
I'm working on the webinar on obedience and reactivity. Like here, it's even more like divisive. Like there are people that will say like obedience and any sort of behavior work is not going together at all, and there are other guys that they will pretty much use obedience for behavior work. So I wanna find out where is the truth, who is right, which side is right. Maybe both of them, maybe none of them. I want to answer that question. I've been training reactive dogs for a long time in residential setup, so it was hands-on training, so I could check what is working, what is not working, what is like upsetting the dog, or etc. etc. And I want to do a webinar to answer that question.
Would we just pay attention to your social media and wait?
Like that's the way to go.
Okay. I was gonna say though, and I always thought it would be funny to make obedience great again.
Oh.
The only thing is,
we need a t-shirt.
We
need dogs and discourse t-shirt, make obedience great again.
I know it's really funny, but also I think people are going to start thinking, oh, you're a MAGA person or something. Like, I don't want it to be a political thing at all by any means.
It's a joke.
It's just a funny.
It's just a joke.
Just a funny
like
thing.
You can get the slogan from other whatever, not MAGA thing. Whatever that is. Like, I'm so not educated politically. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, we shouldn't go there. I was a Bernie Sanders boy. Just for anyone that's into American politics, I love Bernie Sanders.
I've heard the name, but I couldn't believe it.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, let's not go there. We just lost our listeners.
But yeah, I do think obedience is just crucial. I really do. But I understand what you're saying a little bit too. It's like anything. You have this polarization. We spoke about it last week with the medication, right?
Mm-hmm.
You either have to be full on board medication for everything, or you have to be like no medication for anything. And it's like middle ground. Same thing with obedience. Like, there are people that know obedience, and there are people that are like, they don't even pay attention to anything else.
Like, yeah.
So you need.
I think there are people like, I know there are people somewhere like in between, which is kind of like this balanced approach, not to mix up with the balanced trainers, but just healthy approach and adjusting to the dog. And and again, we are coming back to the definition. What is obedience? That's why I'm obsessed with the definitions, because like, if you will tell me how you understand obedience, because obedience can be you do whatever I say you do. That's going to be obedience. But also it can be you do the trick for a cookie. That's going to be also like obedience. Like if the dog will sit for a cookie, and if you don't have a cookie, the dog will say like, fuck you, like I'm not sitting. So that is also obedience. Like obedience is also like guiding the dog. Hey, walk with me. You don't have to react to the dog or hide behind me. That is the behavior that I can ask the dog. So I can, through the obedience training, ask my dog, hey, hide behind me, I'm gonna protect you, and then etc. etc. So it can be a form of guidance. It depends how you train or what is your approach to obedience training. And then, like that should be always starting points, because it's not, there is no one definition.
I was talking about this, you mentioned guidance, and I was talking about that with my friend who's another dog trainer, Carla Delahaye, just give her a shout out. But she was saying, like, we were talking about modeling, and we are talking about how sometimes, I remember when I first was learning about dog training, modeling was very much painted in this, like, really old school way of doing things. And what I mean by modeling is like, hey, you tell the dog to sit and you push them into the sit. That's what I was like, that's what it was taught to me as, like, what modeling is. Like, hey, you're pushing the dog into positions, and it's a really old school way of doing things, and it's not like cool whatsoever. And in that way of doing things, it's not cool.
Yeah.
But it can be
the fact that is effective, because with at least some dogs it's going to be effective doesn't necessarily mean this is the way how I would like to train the dog.
But what I was getting at is, you can't put the little touch point or touching the dog or whatever. Like, you can't. That is not the same as forcing the dog into position. Yeah. And when you just blanket use a term like modeling, it's like, it's deceptive for people, because you're putting so much, like, it's too broad, like, to label as one thing. Like, you need nuance, and this is what I think just causes so many arguments. It's just there's oftentimes just so much nuance that it's like hard for people. There's no clarity, right?
Like, another, maybe, like, it's not related with our topic, that what are the odds that for 100 people you will have like one idiot person?
What are the odds that you'd have 2 idiot people
with
microphones in front of them?
I think, like vast majority of the trainers are reasonable, and really they will say, yeah, I get it. However, there's 1% that will be like obedience only, or anti-obedience, or these labels, or they will create that conflict, us versus them, so that polarization is even bigger, and they will be arguing. And this 1% of people, they are probably making 90% of comments on social media. So if we take a lot of our views, what's happening in the dog training from social media, then, or like especially Facebook, then we have like distorted idea what like vast majority of people think, because like none of my friends is that crazy. Like none of my friends, like all of my friends, including people that I work with, they have like kind of healthy approach to the training, and they can be a little bit more balanced, a little bit more positive, they training, but they understand like other sides as well. However, those are not the people that will comment on social media. But even if they do, the algorithm won't give a half of shit. Well, apparently, like, correct me someone if I'm wrong, that the algorithm is constructed this way that will, promote things that sparks most emotions, right? So if we are wired to feel anger, and there was a study, I'm not gonna find it, like we are wired to even enjoy anger and arguing, right? Those posts, those views will be promoted, and very often those are opposite views, because this is where the people are arguing. Why I'm saying this is like something what if people are like, about unicorns and butterflies. There was a study, it was only 3 people, but it's still like for this kind of study, it was quite a lot. Like I have it somewhere written. I'll have to check. Anyway, there were some electrodes connected to human brains, and then the patients, they could press the button and feel however they wanted to feel. They could feel drunk, horny, whatever. Guess what they were pressing? Like mental. Which one?
Which emotion?
Yeah.
But I'm guessing you're going to say anger, right? Rage, okay. That's interesting, isn't it?
That is like explaining the climate, and people are arguing.
Yeah, that is.
I would have to, I have to double check it. Like last time I read about that, it was when I was writing my book. So a few years ago, I would have to check it out. But it's very, very interesting.
It is really interesting. But I think that, Facebook are doing what is good for Facebook. Like, they want as much engagement as possible. And I think it's pretty, everyone realizes, like, what's happening here.
Yeah, but like this is what I'm saying. Like those like very extreme views. I'm just wondering how many of people they really think like that, right? Or like some, okay, I'm not gonna go there.
People listen to misunderstand though as well.
But yeah, like there are some positive trainers that they may use some corrections, but they will never admit that. Because like it's not like they afraid what they are doing to the dog and the dog is upset. It's about like what other people will say.
It's really
right.
Yeah, this is a whole subject.
same with the tools, same with other things, right? And because there's those extremists that they will go just after you.
What I was going to say is that people listen to misunderstand, and they do that a lot on social media. And they read something and they'll try to find something to get angry at, which maybe is the point of the study. Like people actually enjoy doing that. But also, I think sometimes if I am on social media, sometimes when I look at the people that are commenting, I think there's no one that I look up to that is getting into Facebook arguments. You know what I mean? Like there is no one in these comment sections where I'm like, oh, I really want to be like you.
Oh yeah, there is this saying like you never criticize someone that is doing worse than you, something like that, right? You will criticize only someone that is doing more or better than you, right? So, if somebody is doing better than I am, then I want to learn, and I want to get to that level. If someone is doing worse than me, then I don't give a shit. So that's why I'm not there. That's why I'm not in the comment section.
I know that this is a interesting point in teaching as well, because some people say, hey, you shouldn't demonstrate with other people's dogs because you're going to demoralize them. If they can see you doing something that they can't do, they might be demoralized by that. That's an approach that some people take. And for me, it's always...
Can you see that face?
For me, it's always been the opposite. If I see someone, whether it's with my dog, a different dog or anything, doing something that I can't do, I've always been really motivated by that. Like I just think that's really freaking cool. Like I want to learn how to do that. But I can see how some people might have a more pessimistic attitude about that. They might see that and be like, oh, I can't do that. I might as well just give up.
But like recently you had like shitstorm on our Polish Facebook because we did the recall online cars, and in the promo there were dogs off lead in the town like healing or coming back, etc. And people were like fucking mental, like what are you promoting, dogs off the lead in towns, da 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 da. And I'm like, first of all, how did you end up over here? I don't know you. But another thing, you want to show people what is possible to do, right? You want to show people like, with my example, like it's possible to do, and the dogs can be under control, and you may one day drop the lead accidentally and you don't want the dog to fuck off, so maybe let's train for it. Going with your example, it is like, oh, your dog is capable to do it, but now you can learn the mechanical skills. Like I'm teaching a lot of play, which involves mechanical skills that you can learn. It's not that complicated. It's just you need to, have the good breakdown when to do the maze or how to do the maze or how to react when the dog is doing that. It's just like almost you can have like I'm working on that blueprint that will be just easy to follow. And like how else the dog will learn, and if you can speed up this process, that the dog will say like, oh, the play is super cool. But also like the owner will never know what is possible with the dog. Come on. Like,
yeah, totally. And also I think if you aren't willing to show it, that makes me worry a little bit about, can you actually do it?
Oh, yeah, that should worry.
Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't want to ask someone to do something I don't think I could do myself.
Definitely. But also, like we overestimate how well we can predict or understand like what the dog is capable of doing before you try, right? So you will try a couple of things and then you may come up like, okay, this is the way for that dog. Especially, let's say, with the play, you can have like different strategies. You can, some of the dogs will like chasing, some of the dogs will like biting. How will you know if you won't try?
For me, I oftentimes, if I'm teaching a class and someone's dog is just not getting it, I'll oftentimes take the dog and I'll try a few different things. I'll see which one the dog is responding to, and then I'll show the person that.
Yeah.
And that's just my way of like troubleshooting.
Definitely. That's awesome. I think this is the fastest way and most efficient way. Like I wasn't aware about like this world of dog trainers that they don't train and they just instruct people what to do. Like I wasn't aware that this sort of world exists. But it all makes sense that if you can't do something, then you may become bitter about like other people doing it.
Well, on that positive note,
let's go train dogs, right? Okay. So tell everyone again, like your scope group.
Again, I've got a free course which is going to walk you through how to not only like the neutrality stuff, but also just basically how to have more control of your dog. Just the kind of basic stuff really that we've kind of like touched on a little bit here today. And if you want to get access to that, I have a school group for it. It's called the 66 Club. Probably the easiest way for you to get that is either to look in the description of this podcast, or if you go to my social media, it's on all my little, Instagram bio link, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you should be able to get it there. It's totally free. You don't have to pay anything. So
cool. And I will do obedience and reactivity is going to be paid.
What a bad person.
I'm a bad person. However, my girls, like from Temperament Dogs, they will be running Scout Group inspired. Like we are going over there because of your inspiration. That's going to be orientated around the puppies and puppyhood.
But we should do it. We should do an episode on puppy stuff when that comes out.
All right. We're going to do it. We have a whole list of the things.
That's
cool. Okay. Bye.